Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my presentation. It's an honor for me to speak at this year's conference. Pascal Bravo. Very short about myself, just a couple of facts. My name is Jan-Erik. I'm Dutch, living in Germany and Switzerland since many years, so I turned kind of into a hybrid. Originally, I'm an industrial designer and I've been turning to design management throughout my career in the business. I've spent about 22 years in large companies, of which roughly 20 years almost at Philips. And after that, I left large company structures and moved into academia as a lecturer, professor, researcher. And also, since roughly 9 years, I'm a consultant and owner of a consultant company and author of papers and a book called Leading Design. Today, my topic is about sustainable business and what is required to set up and run a sustainable business and prepare an organization to be sustainable in its business doing. And when you talk about sustainability, of course, you talk about the future. And one thing for me is quite essential in how you view your future. If you want to achieve a desired sustainable future, it's clear you can't manage that. You need to design your way into the future. And before I want to talk about how you can approach a design way into going into the future, let's talk about the future briefly, because it's changed. The future is not longer what it used to be. Not so long ago, 40, 50 years maybe, 50 years ago, when I, for instance, was a small kid growing up, the future was something magnificent, something brilliant, adventurous, with technological marvels and prospects of a better future than the today of 50 years ago. 50 years ago, the world was in turmoil and in change, and there was a lot of conflict, cold wars, etc., and real wars. So the future was a bright place then. Today, though, the future is rather a dark and grim place. Kids today of 5 years old are confronted with uncertainty, with unclarity. There's a lot of, doubt about the future. And this change in how we view future also is indicative of the change we have in our working environment. 50 years ago, maybe even longer, we worked in a particular way, and that also has changed. It's way more different, way more centered on a human, less centered on labor. And same counts for innovation and what businesses do to generate products and services for customers. Innovation also has changed from a functional view of creating devices into creating experiences where humans are centered in an experience creation. So there's been quite a lot of change in business doing when looking into the future. Where the old economy is still dominated by looking at products, today we look at customers. And where in the past all the economy is very much focused on transactions, today we look for value creation. Where in the past we were looking to technology, we tend to look now into people's needs. And where in the past design was doing the design, today design is done by everybody involved in an organization. So we are going through a transition, a transformation, where we move from hierarchical structures to connected and interconnected structures, where we're looking from function and technology into system and connectiveness, and where we look from a technical view to a way more human view. So to business doers and business women and businessmen, this is quite a challenge, and they ask, how can I manage this? How can I manage my future? What do I have to do to manage my business so that I become sustainable, resilient, and fit for future? And clearly most business doers turn to management. And they know that if they can manage their business and their processes and everything they do, they're best prepared to go into the future. Oh yeah, and we also have to add a bit of design to it, isn't it? Because design is something we need to make what we do relevant to people and to differentiate it to people. So ideally, this current way of viewing management versus design is not sufficient when going into the future. It's not sufficient to set up a business in a sustainable way. What business doers have to achieve is the right balance between what they design and what they manage. Achieve the right balance between competencies in design versus competencies in management. So that means that any business that wants to set up a sustainable future has to balance its design issues with its management issues and has to provide answers in both fields in an equal way. So next to answering the question, where do we come from and where do we go to, we also have to answer the question, where do we get the resources? And how do we maintain the access to resources? Or providing the answers to how we become effective towards customers and society, we also have to provide the answers on how we become more efficient. So it's not an either or, it's not choosing a design route or a management route. It's about combining both of these aspects of business doing to create sustainability. Sustainable business are characterized by a good balance between managing and designing. So that also means that leaders in sustainable business doing are those that are able to manage as well as design on a very high level. Now, if we put the business field of today and look at what is currently dominating the business field, then we see that we are still in what we call an experience economy, where business success is highly dependent whether you are able to create relevant and important experiences for your customers, and at the same time being able to differentiate yourself from your market competitors. So if you're able to do that, so to create relevance and differentiation in the same time, you're able to create value for your customers and by that become sustainable as a business going into the future. So how can we create true sustainable value? What do we have to do as business people, as managers, as leaders in organizations? Well, we have to apply, we have to adopt a very clear perspective. And that in most instances mean that we have to change our perspective on how we look at things, on how we look at customers, and how we look at development, and how we look at creating relevant and differentiating solutions. For instance, if we look at this picture, then it's quite clear that we see a person here, and maybe most of you also might have an abuela at home, a grandmother, with these certain attributes. So what do we see? We see a person obviously not at ease, frustrated, holding a device in her hands. She might have difficulties with touch and feeling. She has difficulty with eyesight. She's wearing quite thick glasses. And clearly she's not able to operate the device or is struggling with handling this product. So this clearly is a problem to the user or the consumer, as well as to the company providing such a solution. So if you want to improve on this, if you want to design a more, let's say, better usable and more sustainable product, you have to do something. So what do? How can you react to this observation? Well, you could do and create a product that seems to solve this issue by just providing huge buttons with large contrast in colors, clear lettering, and so forth. And this is the usual practice to respond to such a problem. And well, as you can see, this charming lady, she reminds me of my grandmother. And when I was working at Philips, I did provide her with one of these telephones and gave it to her to test it out. This was roughly 20 years ago. And she looked at the device very closely because she was almost blind and very old, over 90 years old, and still living on her own, luckily. And then she told me, son, she said, this is very kind of you that you give me this telephone, and I can read the text quite well, but it's so ugly, and also I'm not disabled. It looks like the remote control from the hospital. So clearly she was not in favor of the solution that we provided. And still we see these solutions in the marketplace. This is a picture I took recently in a shop in Europe, in Switzerland, where this phone for the elderly was provided. And it says on the little test, it said, this is the mobile telephone for children and seniors. So obviously this business is treating seniors and children in the same way, which is a bit insulting, and it's not really, understanding what elderly people really want. And as you can see from the stars, which indicate the quality, the telephone quality is regarded half a star. So obviously also here the manufacturer is not considering seniors to be in favor of qualitative solutions. So clearly you can see that the way here businesses are responding to needs and to relevance of consumers is faulty, is not really picking up the real insights. There are companies that do it way more smarter, and they do understand that also elderly people have certain attitudes, have certain needs. So you have to change your thinking and change the way you look at circumstances in order to become relevant for people and creating sustainable solutions. So it has to do something with the way we think and the way we respond to problems and how we react to these problems. Because design, in essence, is the process to change and alter things, to move things from a current state into a desired state, to make things better. And it's the way how we respond to problems where we can see the different approaches that we normally take. So there might be a rational approach to a problem. There also might be an abstract approach to a problem. And as this picture indicates, the thinking processes are quite different. So if you start with a problem, in this case, designing a device for elderly people, then you could take a rational approach to solve it, or you can take a more abstract approach to solve it. Well, the rational approach we've seen. You just blow up the buttons, make the product very large and robust, and then obviously you have a solution. But that solution might not be a desired sustainable solution. And in applying an abstract approach, you become way more creative, leading to a different solution. So let's have a look at these two approaches, problem-solving approaches in detail. So with the rational approach, you basically start first with the analysis. You observe, you collect data, you research the data. It's like what happened with the elderly lady. We have collected all what we could observe and researched the data, and then in the next step, after the analysis, we turn to a synthesis. We basically draw a conclusion, decide on an approach, and then we realize that approach and we generate a solution. In this process, any form of abstraction or creativity is actually avoided, actually almost dangerous, so to say, because it would basically open up a whole field of sub-activities It's not really in the frame set of a rational approach. So in this problem solution attitude, it's all about eliminating problems. It's about getting problems out of the way. And as you can imagine, this process is very crucial to us human beings. Over the years, it has saved us from misery. And I would call this the management approach because it's able to quickly analyze a situation, understand the issue, and then draw a conclusion and a decision. You know? So luckily, because of this ability that we have to manage problems, we can also eliminate them. But do we create sustainable solutions with such an approach? Let's look at the abstract one that is equally important to us human beings. It's the approach that is not maybe eliminating problems, but adding something to it. It's about creating new things. It's about a creative process. This process starts not with analysis, but with empathy, with feeling, with assumptions. It basically starts with our heart instead of our head. And we first feel a situation, and based on that assumption and feeling, we start to go into sort of a gut feeling or gut reaction by creating and ideating and proposing solutions. In this process, we try to avoid rational, deductive reasoning. We focus to stay abstract and create new stuff, create opportunities and create new things. Actually, we create problems. And luckily, because of this process, we humans can progress. We can create new insights, new things. And because of this, we progress also into future. Without such a process and without this process in place, we would still be, sitting on those trees like 10,000 years ago and waiting for an opportunity. And because of this process, we consider to go out and try out new things, even with the risk that we get eaten by the wild animals. And then there's a third one, a combination of these two processes. One that I would consider more holistic, where design and management processes is combined. And this is known as a design thinking process. One that starts with analysis, with a clear understanding of facts and figures, and then applies research. But then instead of jumping to conclusions, instead of jumping into realization, this process then follows up with empathizing and then creating. And only in the last instance it realizes the solution. So this process is really including both rational and abstract approaches to come to very strong, and I would call them sustainable solutions. With this, you can really solve problems rather than eliminating them or creating them. And we designers know this process as our design process, or some people call it the double diamond process. To illustrate very quickly how this can be applied, I want to showcase this story from Philips, where there was an experience that was happening, which wasn't a pleasant one. Experience economy doesn't mean that everything has to be happy and cheerful. Experiences can also be difficult and intimidating, but still, there is always a way to design experience in a relevant and also very fulfilling way. So in this particular case, there was a business challenge. A challenge that was, influencing the sustainability of the business, and in this case also of the hospital. The hospital was running a pediatric department, so a department for child care hospital support, and it had problems by running a CT scanner. A CT scanner is a device where you can make X-ray pictures of people. And in this particular case, that particular CT scanner wasn't running efficiently. And the question to Philips was, please, Philips, can you help us to reduce the costs and to make everything more efficient, because otherwise we cannot afford such a product in our pediatric department. So what is the obvious approach? A rational approach. And what was done so far? How did, let's say, the managers approach this problem? Well, first of all, they look to the facts. So if you observe the situation of children, in a hospital, in an examination, then it's quite clear why they are so expensive. It's because of the children. These examinations are expensive because they take so long. The children are often very nervous, full of anxiety and fear, and that's why they don't keep still during X-rays, and the whole process of handling these children takes very long, and therefore the amount of examinations is very reduced and the hospital cannot make its numbers. So the solution, jumping to a solution, is quite clear. As we understand, we have to eliminate the problem. So what do? We sedate these children, and then we can run the procedure quite quickly and smoothly. And this was what happened and what was done repeatedly. Children were taken out of the equation as part of the problem. They were eliminated. But is this sustainable? Is this a solution with which you can go into the future? Not really. It was clearly a solution that created problems elsewhere, created new problems in another area. So the elimination of a problem here just meant other problems somewhere else, and clearly this whole situation was not sustainable. So Philips set out to apply a design approach to this. And here again, we started with the facts. And the facts just remain the facts as they are. Yes, the examination is long because of the children, and they don't keep still and they are very nervous. But instead of jumping to a conclusion and eliminating the problem, now we apply insights. We listen to our heart and try to feel into the situation. Why is that? And what is all influencing this? How can we observe and dive deeper into understanding the root cause of the issues? So we put ourselves into the shoes of all the stakeholders involved, try to understand from their perspective what is happening. So not only the children, but the personnel, the radiologists, the nurses, then also the hospital owners, the insurance companies, and people related to that in healthcare, and then the family, of course, the people around the children, and the parents. And here, for instance, we discovered that the parents play a crucial role in how children feel and behave during interventions. So parents basically project their anxiety and their fear onto the children. And with all these insights gathered, we kind of collected them into so-called customer journeys and insight sheets where we have deep understanding of the root causes. We move into our stomach and say, what kind of hunch can we get out of this? What do we think could be right? What could we do? What if we would create an experience out of the intervention? Something that children can understand and anticipate, and by which the event can reduce anxiety and stress, and maybe even, can turn it into a special occasion. And with that, we could speed up the process and reduce the delay, and also reduce the artifacts in the pictures. So basically reduce the amount of wrong pictures. So with that hunch, you start into a design process, a creative process, where you create various opportunities and you basically open up to new solutions. And in this case, a guided tour was one of the hunches that came out of it. What if we would just take these children and their parents and make them go through an adventure, so to say, by which the children are guided, and therefore the intervention and also the examination is done quickly. So, going to realization, we created concrete prototypes which turned into products which are available. And one of them was a set of animations that help children to be guided and to be animated. And also, we created something for parents where they could offload their anxiety and take care of their children in a rather effective way. So, here you can see the prototype of the CT scanner, which is this X-ray device, and the projections that we created. And here you can see an animation, which was, in this case, a submarine floating around, and the submarine, ever so often, would submerge, would go underwater, and then go up again. So the nurse or the doctor could tell the children if they were still, if they hadn't been, in most instances, these are examinations where children are just, awake and fully participating. He could tell the kid, look at this submarine, and if the submarine submerge, you have to hold your breath. And, lying down, this is a picture of a real product, how it is installed into a hospital. So if you lie down in that disc and, the whole thing is starting to turn and creating noise, you could observe the animation, and yes, if the submarine or the airship is submerging, a child would hold his breath, and at that moment the doctor would take a picture, which normally is turning all fine. And then we also created a special area for parents where they could prepare their children before a X-ray picture or intervention, and featured a mock-up of a scanner with puppets. And if you would put these puppets into the scanner, on the screen in the background, an X-ray picture would come up. So parents were asked to instruct their children on the procedure and so forth. And with this, parents could, help the children and also, create a bond with the children, and therefore reduce anxiety and stress. As a result, the amount of sedations of children in this intervention could be reduced by over 60% in most instances. And also the amount of wrong pictures could be reduced dramatically. So overall, increasing the use of the system, and by this turning this into a sustainable, valuable business solution. And the interesting thing is that this whole process also works with adults. You just change the animation for a picture of Grand Canyon, and also adults will feel more at ease. And also here, the procedures are improved, the time is shortened. So it's clearly an approach where you combine insights, analysis, with reframing and ideation to come to really sustainable, good solutions. And that's something that our business leaders want to pick up to. So they ask this question: how can I design my organizations? What do I have to do in order to do this? How can I become more resilient and also sustainable in picking up this? What are the requirements for my business to change from a management-driven approach to a more balanced design management-driven approach? Well, you have to, first of all, design your organization as such. You have to build designful conditions, because in most organizations, management structures are quite well established. In general, it are the design conditions which have to develop. So first, it's clear that you have to create a culture in your organization where you have the freedom to abstract, where it's possible to think outside this management process and really go into this design area, where people are not pressed for being efficient where they are also allowed to be really effective. So where also it is an opportunity for people to think in a more free and abstract way. So it needs that right culture, and this starts with setting the right conditions for it. But for that culture not to end up in a, let's say, in a party where everything is creative and abstract and free, you also need a strategy. You need something that will help the organization to focus. The organization needs to know why they are doing what they're doing and for who they are doing it. So they need to have a strategic guidance and leadership in place, because without it, freedom will turn into chaos. So it needs focus and strategy. And what it also needs is a right capability. A sustainable organization cannot live without design competencies. It's not sufficient to just buy those in from suppliers or from the outside. An organization has to build the capability itself to design its way into the future. And what it needs for that is it has to have an organization that is collaborating, that is working together, that is not treating design as a separate thing, but as an integrated thing. An organization has to integrate design and management into a collaborative way of working. And last but not least, it needs people that really want to do this, that really are opening up to embrace the freedom to abstract, to accept the strategy that is setting a direction, and to collaborate and integrate with others. So it needs motivated and intrinsically driven people. So if you are building your organization and you're building your design competency, you basically are looking at 3 dominant ways to insert design in your organization. First, you need what I call a design being, which is a fundament for design. It's basically a way to determine where you are, who you are, and what you're doing. Secondly, you need this design thinking in place and the process that we just discussed, a design process that makes you aware of how you respond to the challenges around you. And this is how basically you can develop relevance for your customers and really create the right solutions, the right answers to the problems around you. And lastly, you have the design doing. So if you have design thinking in place and you know why you are in business, with that design doing, the execution, the creation of design output, then basically you have discovered the core aspects of your business, and you create the foundation for a sustainable business. Sustainable value, therefore, needs a process in place. Sustainable value can only happen if organizations, businesses, understand their relationship with customers, and if they're really aware that they can only become sustainable if they deliver something to customers which is creating a circular, let's say, value creation. So if businesses want to develop sustainable value, they have to first understand the need of their customers. Understanding the needs, what's really important. So think of grandma. What does she really need? Then you have to derive these insights. She wants a device that she can be proud of, that she feels treated right, that she also feels to be treated as a person with taste and dignity. Then, if you have those insights, you can create a purpose for your organization. you start to understand that your organization has a purpose to fulfill needs for particular people, and that is the input a business needs in order to create its reason for being, its raison d'être, so to say. So with that purpose, you lay the foundation for your design being, which could be your brand or your positioning and your values. And with this, and this is basically the strategy that you have, with this you can basically drive your design thinking. So with a particular set of values and a particular brand in mind, you start to develop your design thinking processes, and you create those solutions, and those solutions that become really relevant to your customers. If you apply, let's say, the design doing, so the articulation in the really fitting way, you can provide sustainable value to your customers, and with that, creating sustainable value for the future. So for organizations that want to go into the future and build a sustainable future, it's not enough to manage. You can't manage your future. You have to design your future. It means you have to design and manage at the same time. It's not either or. Only businesses that are able to design and manage in the same equal level, in the same integrated level, they are able to create a sustainable business. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if there are any questions, I think we turn back to the broadcast, and I would be happy to answer some of your questions.